Welcome to Club Geneva, your podcast, your voice. In this episode, the lines between the real and supernatural blurs, and the mysteries of the unseen come to life. I'm your host, Shady, and tonight we'll dive into a world where shadows have a life and whispers carry the voices of the unknown. Halloween is upon us, and I absolutely love a good scare. So, you've heard the stories, the eerie folklore passed down through generations. The haunted buildings, the unexplained phenomena. But what if I told you there's more? Beneath the surface of every ghost story lies a hint of truth, a glimpse into the unknown forces science has yet to fully explain. In Club Geneva, we explore the paranormal, not just as a myth, but as the fascinating intersection between science and the supernatural. Quantum physics suggests that multiple dimensions may exist alongside our own. Dimensions where time and space behave differently. Some scientists even speculate that paranormal events could be the result of these dimensions overlapping with our own, briefly allowing us to witness what we do not understand. Energy can neither be created nor destroyed, so where does it go when life ends? Could it remain behind, lingering in places filled with trauma and emotions? Could this energy be what we've come to know as spirits? Tonight's story, called The Lurker in the Shadows, takes us in the heart of Chicago's South Side, an abandoned building, and a skeptic named Kendra, and also a force that defies logic and explanation. Paranormal or not, something is lurking in the darkness, waiting to be found. So, if you're home, I want you to turn down the lights, settle in, and let's let this story unfold. The Lurker in the Shadows. In the heart of Chicago's South Side, at the end of a crumbling, forgotten street, stood an old, abandoned building. The locals avoided it like the plague. The structure was notorious, whispered about in hushed tones in the bars and on the street corners. There were stories of shadows moving when there should not be, the sound of chains rattling at night, and the flashes of dark figures in the windows. No one dared to go near it, not anymore. Kendra, born and raised on the South Side, didn't believe in such nonsense. She was tough, hardened by the streets, and had no patience for ghost stories. When her friends dared her to spend a night inside the building, she didn't hesitate. "You're crazy, Kendra," her friend Marcus said, standing outside the iron gates that led up to the building's boarded-up entrance. The wind whistled ominously, carrying the scent of decay. "They say people who go in there never come back, Kendra." As they disappeared into the distance, Kendra took one last look at the sagging, graffiti-covered facade. She gave a shrug, pushed through the old wooden door, and stepped inside. The air was cold, colder than it should have been. The building seemed to groan with age. Its rotten timbers creaked beneath her weight. Her flashlight flickered, casting erratic beams of light down the long, dark corridors. Broken glass crunched beneath her boots, and the stench of mold and rot filled her nostrils. As she made her way deeper into the building, the silence became unnerving. It felt unnatural, oppressive, as though something was sucking the very sound out of the air. The flashlight's beam skimmed over the peeling wallpaper, and dark stains that could have been blood, and her bravado began to wane. After what felt like hours of wandering, she found herself in what must have been a ballroom. The ceiling, sagging and water-stained, held the remnants of a once grand chandelier, now shattered and barely hanging by a thread. The floor was a minefield of broken glass and debris. But it was the feeling of being watched that unnerved her the most. The shadows seemed too thick, too sentient. And then there she heard it, a soft scraping like nails on stone. She whipped around, the flashlight's beam darting frantically across the room, but there was nothing. Until she heard it again, closer this time. She spun around, breath catching in her throat. The sound was coming from the far end of the room, but the shadows were too dense to make out anything clearly. Then a figure emerged, its limbs grotesquely long, bending and twisting as it moved. Its face was a hollow mask, with glowing empty eyes that seemed to bore into Kendra's very soul. Its mouth was a jagged slash, curled into a grotesque grin. "Who the hell are you?" Kendra's voice trembled. She was trying to stay strong, trying to convince herself that this was a trick, a prank her friends were pulling, but deep down she knew it wasn't. The figure didn't respond. Instead, it lurched forward, its movements jerky like a marionette of invisible strings. With each step, the air seemed to grow colder, heavier. Kendra could see her breath misting in the air now, her heart pounding in her chest. She backed up, nearly tripping over the debris, but the figure came closer still. Suddenly, the whisper began. At first, it was a low murmur, almost like the wind, but then it grew louder, more frantic, like 1,000 voices screaming in unison. Kendra clamped her hands over her ears, but it did nothing to block the sound. The voices filled her head, pounding at her skull like a hammer. She could hear words now, words filled with pain, agony, and rage. Leave, die, suffer. Panic seized her. For now, she bolted for the exit, but before she could reach it, a cold, skeletal hand wrapped around her arm, its grip like iron. Kendra screamed. The figure yanked her back, slamming her against the wall with inhumane strength. She felt the bones in her arm crack, the pain shooting through her like lightning. She tried to fight back, kicking and thrashing, but the thing was too strong. It leaned in closer, its foul breath reeking of death and decay, its mouth open wider than any human's should, revealing rows of sharp, jagged teeth. Kendra's breath hitched as she felt the razor edge of its claw dig into her skin, the flesh splitting open with a sickening tear. With a primal scream, she wrenched herself free, but not before it left deep, bleeding gashes across her side. She staggered to her feet, blood dripping onto the floor. The pain was intense. It almost blinded her. She stumbled towards the door, her vision blurring, the figure's laughter echoing in her ears. As she reached the street side, her friends came rushing over. "Oh my God, Kendra, what happened?" Marcus said, his face pale with fear as he saw the blood soaking through her clothes. Kendra was shaking, her body convulsing from shock and pain. "Something inside that building," she gasped, her voice barely a whisper, but as she spoke, a shadow shifted in the corner of her vision. The figure was there, standing outside the doorway, watching her. Its glowing eyes flickered with malicious intent. And as her friends led her away, Kendra knew that it wasn't over. The lurker had marked her, and it wasn't done, not by a long shot. So, what do you think? I thought it was a really good story. I really appreciated many different aspects of it. Let me know what you think in the comment box below. But anyway, thank you for joining us on this journey into the shadows. If you dare to return, Club Geneva will be waiting. Remember, sometimes the things we don't understand are just waiting for us to look a little closer. Until next time, stay curious and stay aware of what's lurking just beyond the edge of sight. I'm your host, Shady. I want you all to have a wonderful night and stay safe. Take care.